What's up, everybody? My name's Josh, and welcome to Beers with an Economist. Today, we're going to be talking about gas prices again. So they seem to be coming down, right? Last time we talked, it were $4.29, now $4.09. Are they going to keep coming down? And what determines the price of gas that you pay at the pump anyway? It's not just all oil, right? And if I get enough beer in me, I might be willing to talk, if Ben will convince me, about Biden's strategic oil reserve release announcement today. That's what we're going to be talking about today over beers. There are a few different things that determine the price that you pay at the pump. I'm going to put a little infographic up right here. So they are, the majority of the price, nearly 2/3 of it, is the price of oil, which we discussed in the last episode, but I'll talk a little bit about again today. The second thing is the refining process, the taking the oil and turning it into gasoline. Then there is distribution and marketing and all the things that they need to get the gas to the gas station. And then there are the taxes that you pay to the federal government and to the state that you're in. And then the tiniest little bit, the part that's not even on the infographic, is the part that the gas stations are actually setting their price based on their competition with each other. Okay, so let's start with a recap of the oil market a little bit and give you guys a little bit more detail. So in our last episode, which I'm going to put in a card right here for you to click on, we talked about how the market for oil is a global market. So the supply of demand of oil matters globally, not just here in the US. So it matters about the total amount of production, the total amount of demand across the entire globe. Now, I've seen a lot of kind of popular shows like Trevor Noah's Daily Show, and I think Jon Stewart even addressed this, and a few other people, about, well, like, somebody sets the price of oil. Somebody decides how much to charge, and why can't our oil distributors just charge us less? Well, that's actually not how oil works. You see, oil is sold on a series of commodity markets. So it's not as if the producers of oil are setting a price like Publix sets the price of a gallon of milk, right? They're actually selling that oil on these large commodity markets that function a lot like a stock market. So the actual price of a barrel of oil at any given time is determined by how many buyers there are and how many sellers there are in that marketplace. And the price is adjusted by the market maker in that commodity market to match the number of buyers and sellers. Okay, so they're not setting their own price. These commodity markets actually are, and there's several of them across the globe, but they're all very interconnected, right? So if you can get a better price in the European market, then you're going to go over there with your oil as opposed to the American one. So all of these markets are very connected. The next thing that determines the price of oil is the refining process. That is turning crude oil into gasoline or diesel fuel, right? Now, this involves a number of chemical processes that differ based on the time of year and the location and a few other factors, right? So for example, gasoline, all else equal, will always get more expensive in the summer due to the way that it needs to be refined. So you need a different chemical composition, and you get lower yield off of a barrel of oil, lower yield of gasoline. So that makes the summer formula more expensive than, say, the winter formula. Okay, now that makes up a smaller percentage of the overall price, but it definitely matters. And in terms of how much prices are fluctuating, again, from, say, winter to summer, now that we're now moving into, part of that price increase is the refinery switching over into summer formulated fuel. So the next big factor that determines gas prices is the distribution of the gas, right? So we have somewhere in the ballpark of 130 refineries in the US, but the vast majority of them are located along the Gulf Coast of Texas and Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, right? So just that western Gulf Coast is where the vast majority of the refineries are and the vast majority of the capacity is. Again, there is a couple on the West Coast, there's a couple in the Northeast, and there's a few in the Midwest. But for the most part, most of the refined gasoline and diesel fuel in the US is coming from the Gulf Coast. And so it has to be transported everywhere else, right? So what that means is that overall you'll see, all else equal, lower gas prices in the Southeast than you will in the Northeast or out West, for example, because it's all about how far that gasoline has to get transported to get to the gas station that you buy your gas from. And then the last factor that is going to make a difference, and this one is making a splash a little bit lately, are the taxes that we pay. Now, these are a little bit different than the sales taxes that you pay on normal goods. These are actually paid at a fixed rate, in most cases, to the federal government and to state governments per gallon, right? So instead of a percentage of the total sale, they're paid on a fixed rate per gallon. So, for example, the federal gasoline tax is about 50 cents a gallon, and then each state has their own specific taxes. So here in Alabama, the tax is relatively low. And in California, those taxes are incredibly high based on national standards. And so that's why, all else equal, you'll always see more expensive gasoline in California than you would here where we are in Alabama. Now, I would be remiss at this point if I didn't pause and talk a little bit about gas tax holidays, because that's been a big subject of debate among pundits on the news and various other people. So before I get to that, though, I want to talk about that last little element of the gas price. And so basically, all of the things that we just talked about determine the majority of the cost of the gasoline that makes it to your local gas station. And those gas stations are working on relatively thin margins of profit per gallon of gas. And so the only thing left is just that tiny little bit, just a few cents a gallon of wiggle room that they have, and that they alter price basically on competition with other gas stations, right? So overall, the actual setting of the price of gasoline makes up an extraordinarily small percentage of the overall price that you end up paying. So it's really important to keep in mind as we move forward. Now, let's talk a little bit about gas tax holidays. So for example, Maryland has passed a gas tax holiday where they've removed their state tax on gasoline. And I believe also Georgia has done something similar, or is maybe planning on doing something similar. I don't honestly remember at this point. Now, would that be a good idea? Okay, so these gas taxes, I mean, so even in a, let's say, kind of an average US state, these gas taxes might be 40 cents a gallon on the, maybe even that's a little on the high side. Okay, so how much of that would end up in your pocket as a consumer? So if your state stopped paying or stopped collecting that gasoline tax, you got to think, even if all of that went to you, that's not a lot of money, right? So your average consumer might fill up a tank of gas a week, maybe 15 gallons. So we're talking somewhere, in the ballpark of, $5 per week for average. Right. Okay, guys, got my math sorted out. Pretty bad when an economist can't do arithmetic. So $6 a week is what I meant to say earlier. So that's not a lot for the average consumer. That's not really going to give you a huge break. Which also you should keep in mind that when you freak out about gas prices, that's about how much gas has gone up since this Ukraine crisis started. It's only about 40 cents. So that's about $6 a week for the average consumer and kind of the average car. All right, guys. So Ben, behind the camera here, has convinced me to talk to you guys about Biden's announcement today about release on the strategic oil reserve, but not before I got another beer. Okay, where to start with this? All right, let's just give you guys a rundown in case you haven't been paying attention. So Biden said that he's going to release 1 million barrels of oil a day for the next 6 months, okay? And that sounds like a big deal, right? Woo, 1 million barrels a day. Wow, amazing, right? Until you realize that the US consumes about between 18 and 19 million barrels of oil a day. So even just thinking about US consumption alone, this is a relatively small overall increase. And then again, when we consider global production, because as we talked about in a previous episode, oil is sold in a global market. So this is not just about the US, it's about what's going on in the entire world. We end up in this situation where we are maybe increasing the world supply of oil by about 1%, right? And at the end of the day, that just isn't going to make that big of a difference on prices in the best case scenario. But it gets worse than that, guys, because in the worst case scenario, if you're US shale or you are OPEC, are you going to continue with your plans to increase supply once you've now learned that the US president is planning on just flooding the market with a million barrels of oil a day? I may be being cynical here, but my guess is that they won't. They will, moderate any planned increases of production that they have, and that will probably mostly offset the increase. Now, just in case you think I'm being partisan here, or I'm not being fair to Joe Biden and the Democrats, I need you guys to remember that this is the exact thing that all of the Republicans wanted him to do 3 weeks ago, right? All of them were all up in arms. Why isn't Joe Biden releasing the strategic oil reserve? It was a dumb idea when they said it. It's a dumb idea now when Joe Biden's doing it. So it's just really not going to make that big of a difference. And the thing that we all just need to get through our heads at this point is the only thing that's going to bring oil prices down is time. It's going to take time for the prices to come down because A, prices rise quickly and they fall slowly. B, because it takes time for producers to increase production and adjust their production process. It takes time for it to filter through the supply chain. And so we all just need to, in my opinion, maybe calm down a little bit about gas prices and stop worrying about what the president can do about them, because the answer is nothing. The president can do absolutely nothing about gas prices.